and also the call of his constituents, and he helped us find compromises, and I'm very, very grateful, John, for your assistance. Without you, with any other mayor of Missoula I've ever known, this couldn't have happened. Secondly, let me introduce, to most of you know him, Paul Kuiper. He's the Executive Vice President of Washington Corporations or Washington Companies, Corporations. And has been involved for quite a long time. He knows about wildlife, he knows about bicyclists, he knows about roads, and the Washington Corporation owns the ranch that we used to own. And so he's been such a stand-up guy, and has done everything that he could possibly do, including not only his own time, but some resources from Washington Corporation, most notably the person who designed the sign that I'm going to unveil, which is Steve Lawrence, who is Washington Corporation's graphic artist, and he did a great job. For those of you who haven't seen it, it is a great job. So Paul, and then in 2011, after 2 years of struggle and a lot of lawyers that I had to pay to enforce this covenant, 2011, Paul had a brainstorm, and he convened a luncheon at the ranch house, which of course I refer to as my mother's house. And the luncheon was for Mayor Engen and Paul and me. And in that luncheon, we began to lay the groundwork for a plan that has now taken full bloom. And we kind of got done what we needed to get done and met all the goals and dealt with all of the conflicts about the property, which I will briefly describe. But thank you very much for being the maker of the winning solution. Who is not, a couple people that are not here. One of them is my little brother, A. Reed Marbut. If I told you what A stands for, he wouldn't like it, so I won't. But he is in Salem, Oregon, and not able to be with us today. After he left the ranch, he went to law school at age 50, became a lawyer with a special interest in water rights, and became the water rights expert in Oregon, who was their key guy to deal with Indian tribes, agricultural users, recreational users. Here's my notes, and you're in for an hour. Recreational users and fishermen and people who float the rogue, etc. So his job has been being sort of translator between various people that are interested in water. Only he's the law, which is called water rights. So at any rate, when he retired, he decided he wasn't too old to practice law. And I'm too old to work too, but we both do for some bizarre reason. A little. He works a lot, so he said, I have a client crisis and we cannot go to Montana. But he's been hugely helpful. A water rights lawyer shouldn't look at a conservation easement, but he's been extremely helpful and supportive in this process. So now I'm going to sort of talk about a couple of other people that are here, but I'll circle back around and explain for some of you how it was that Reed was involved in this project, and my older brother as well. The person who's not here, most sadly, is my older brother, Gary R. Marbut, who is the father of Gary S. Marbut, whom I call Steve. But I've been forbidden to say Stevie, even though I was babysitting him. And I'll never get over it.
Once you get to be an adult, you've got to stop that.
If I'm Barbie, he's Stevie. So there you go. And holding Gary Stevens' arm is Edie Marbut, who is Gary R. Marbut's widow. Gary, as most of you know, died in 1998. Way too soon. And so Gary is here in spirit, like my mother, but not in person. Maggie Pittman, formerly the Conservation Director of Five Valleys Land Trust, has retired and is moving on to other activities, but she wrote so many versions of the conservation easement that Five Valleys agreed to hold that she did it over and over. We lost count of how many versions there were, but we had to make the city happy, me happy, Reed happy, Mayor happy, Parks and Rec happy, Washington, everybody needed to be happy, and so that was version after version after version. Most of all, this wildlife and this fauna was who we wanted to be happy, like in a new, modern conservation easement. And then finally I want to introduce to, I think almost everybody knows my daughter Kelly, my amazing daughter Kelly. She became, about 15 years ago, Kelly was a partner of an architecture firm in Denver. I'll be short, I promise. And decided he got a commission to write a book for architects, and got a commission for that year, and called me and said, Mom, can I come spend a year at the cabin and bring my horse and write my book? And I said, sure. And her brother said, yeah, 1 year. Well, that was 15 years ago. So Kelly remained in Missoula, and it was clear when Kelly got back to town that the thistles here needed attention, and that people who were playing paintball in the woods needed to get gone. And the shards of metal from cars that went through this fence on a regular basis needed to get gone. And so Kelly became the steward of the land, healed the meadow, occasionally policed. She will say after somebody goes off and disappears, goes off the road, crashes and disappears, she's the one that says, I'm going to do my CSI thing. Do you know that there's a red thing? And I found out that that's a Ford pickup of a particular year. So Kelly's been the steward of the land, and she's an expert forest stewardship person. So she's been the steward of the land ever since, and she and her husband Ken have put in endless hours bringing the meadow back to health. And one other family member, now she has a home that she designed across the creek from where my cabin is, and a husband named Ken Justice, and not one horse, but 4 horses, 1 dog, 1 cat, and 1 predatory deer that is trying to kill her dog. So that's Kelly's life. She's also a consulting architect for green building. Okay, and then finally our videographer that you see with his machine, which his name is Ty Marbut. He's my great nephew, who is a great nephew. And thank you very much for being here. Ty just graduated from Reed College, as did his friend Anna. And Ty is working in several capacities, one of which is doing video productions at Portland State Business School professor or something like that. Right? But as far as I know, he's not charging me a fee to do a little shoot here today, so he asked me a question. Don't tell me. Okay, so let me engage in a little bit of history, like 35 years in 10 minutes. Some of you have read the in memoriam thing about my mother's life, and she was a truly remarkable, the perfect definition of matriarch, but a very kindly one. But I'm going to sort of give you the history of why it is that we own the ranch and so on. The road has been a long one from there to here, to this rededication. So I need to tell you a little about the ranch and my mom. In 1950, Big Brother Gary convinced her to come to find a ranch, and so they found a ranch in Lolo, about 10 miles up the road, which was out of County, and was 500 acres, and they owned that ranch for 5 years until 1955, at which time my mother traded that ranch for 500 acres for one that's 10 times the size. It's called Grand Creek Ranch, which is when the serious business of ranching began. So we needed a lot of people to run this ranch, and the people that we needed right away were a chief executive to make decisions, a financial officer, a cattle inventory manager, an organizer, a caterer for cattle auctions that could do big barons of beef and get them sliced, a subdivision expert, and a trail guide for a whole passel of children and grandchildren. And those jobs were held by Charlo, who did it all. In addition, there were 2 ranch managers who did the literally heavy lifting, meaning both hay bales and calves and trying to get born in February, and sometimes agreed on things, sometimes, the 2 of them. And I was here in the summer times, professoring in the winter, as the assistant cook, dishwasher, tractor driver, gopher, peacemaker, and parent of 2 children, of whom one is here today. So now, a little bit about the children of the ranch, which we bought in 1955, which was staffed for many, many, many jobs, but done by very, very few people, and a lot of hay hands. Kelly was a little bitty one. She used to ride on her pony to get calves out from under the brush. And the 4 children, she, her brother, and 2 other children, were pipe changers. And they used to quarrel about how many cents per pipe, because some of them thought that others were earning more, and it was the class of workers. Salaries are different for different people. So let me keep my place here. Yeah, if I can't lose my place, or I have to talk forever. When this ranch was purchased, it was a corporation at first, but it became a partnership, and whose general partners were my mother, Charlotte, my older brother, Gary R. Marbut, me, and my younger brother, Reed Marbut, who's the one that's in Salem. And Mom was the glue that held this whole operation together. She really was the kind of make it work, however hard it is, however long it takes, it's got to work. So when she died in 1978, she was born in 1895, can you imagine the world she was born into? Like not even inside indoor plumbing, let alone a personal computer and a cell phone. Yeah, right. But between us, she and I represent three centuries. So at any rate, when she died in 1978, the future of the ranch was uncertain. The future of the two brothers was uncertain. We were all kind of in shock for a period of time. And this will make me weepy, but don't worry about it, I'll get over it. One of the things we thought we could do was, this was her favorite place, so we can make this a nature refuge. And so we made it a refuge and donated it to National Wildlife Federation and wrote a covenant. Alex George, an attorney that some of us older folks can remember, wrote a covenant which today would be called a conservation easement. It's about 3 pages long and it essentially says no humans, don't mess with the wildlife, keep it pristine, etc., etc. And the covenant was useful for a while, particularly while Reed was still in town before he went to law school. But it began to do some deteriorating, and there began to be uses of this place that would be very scary to wildlife. So that's when Kelly arrived to kind of begin to return things to the way that they ought to be. And it's also when there began to be a bicycle, well, not then, but at any rate, Kelly got the thing under control. But then some easements got put on the land for a bike trail, unbeknownst to me, and so that's kind of when the action began in 2009. So I will now fast forward. There was shall I call it a bicycle lobby, and a lot of requests for bike trail easements going up to get a bike trail all the way up to the city limits. And this led to a conflict on this property between the rights and needs of wildlife protected by an easement, a covenant, that didn't have any protection except the amount of money I was willing to spend on lawyers. And the conflict for this particular piece of property was particularly severe. And then I discovered that these easements were undefined about where you could put asphalt. So I went to work on it, and that's when Paul and the Rangers came to the rescue to help a bunch of them. We said we can figure out a way to fix this. So we, the Marbuts, are principally Reed and me, and with Kelly's strong assistance, identified some goals we had for whatever's going to happen about this property. It needs to remain the memorial site, and we need new ownership of the land. We need a strict and modern conservation easement that is institutionalized, namely is enforced by someone other than us generations of Marbuts. And I'll pause right there to introduce one person who's representing Five Valleys Land Trust. Sarah, where are you? Right here. Sarah Richmond, who is representing Five Valleys Land Trust today because Maggie's retired and Grant's in Germany, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you for coming.
Yes.
So we needed a modern conservation easement, which I've described as being multiple versions. We were agreeable as a goal to have a bike trail easement as long as it's in the right location, which is within 18 feet of this road. So from about here over, this will be carved out of the conservation easement. And there's a legal description in the easement that says this is where the trail is going to be, and not anywhere over there. It will be fenced, it will have signs, it will not permit public access. And so that's how we're meeting that goal. We, like everyone that drives this road, wanted safe passage for bicyclists because bicycles and cars and wildlife and kids don't mix. In fact, as I came down this morning, I was telling somebody I came around the corner. There was a bicycle coming up on the corner. Oh, this is real. No, he's looking down. I'm coming this way. There's a fast-moving car coming this way, and a deer jumped out in front of his bike. And he went down on the shoulder, but he's okay. And the car behind him slammed on the brakes, and I just waited. See, I don't want this to happen on this day, please. So, in any event, we wanted safe passage for bikes. There's a lot of energy behind kids in Prospect who'd like to have friends up and and Grand Creek Hills. We wanted them to be served. We wanted to make sure that the city would agree, which the city has graciously agreed to do, to put up signage that sort of explains that's theirs, the wildlife, and this is yours, like that. And we hope that people will be courteous about that will work. So those were our goals. I believe all of those goals have been met. Happy wildlife, happy fauna, happy city, happy Five Valleys, happy drivers, happy bikers, happy Marbut donors, especially happy me, which is not just a win-win solution, it's win-win-win-win-win-win-win. So I know that, cry time, I know Charlotte would be very proud, not that we're doing this. She hated ostentation and this kind of a ceremony. She would be, sorry, Mom. She would be really cross, but she would love to know how hard all of us worked to make this happen and save it forever as her heritage. So with that, I'm going to go to the properly veil draped sign and unleash it. And some of you already seen it, darn. Didn't get the velvet down here in time. So I'll be right back. But if there's, let's start with the people who did this thing, Kelly, Paul, and Bering, and if you can get past your shyness and would make a couple of remarks about how fun this whole process was.
Oh, absolutely. So first I have to say that I regret that I didn't have the opportunity to meet Charlotte because it's clear that she didn't raise no dummies. And while I also regret that I didn't meet Gary, I spent a little time on the phone with Reed, and between Reed and Barbara, it became very clear that she had her some bright children, children who I think, and I use this Turner phrase with fondness, formidable children, folks who know what they want, know what they stand for, are willing to compromise when appropriate, but not willing to compromise principle. And with some conversation and some time, I think we came to a solution that, as you suggest, is all about winning. You know, my job has occasional complications, and there are parts of it that are difficult, but projects like this are a real pleasure because you get to meet fantastic people who really have, in the end, the same goals in mind and a desire to get there, and you just sort of cobble the pieces together. So among meetings and luncheons and lots of paperwork, we landed in a place that lets us be here on a lovely July day in what I consider paradise, and we acknowledge the great woman who started this all, and we acknowledge the family who remains here taking care of the place and who, through generosity and community spirit, have let us build a trail that will serve multiple purposes for a long time. And this is really all about what happens after we're gone, to no small degree, and long after we're all gone, folks will be grateful for the actions that you all took to make this happen. So Paul and Barbara and family, thank you very much. Thanks to our partners at Five Valleys and to nature for a pretty fantastic day.
Yes, well, I ordered this day. That's why we moved it from the 4th to the 5th, because I knew the weather was there. Paul, shy Paul, you want to say anything?
Well, I am shy. I would just make a few comments. Number one, what a great process it was I think for Mike and I, as we learned a lot about the heritage and the history of the family and of this valley. One of our jobs is to manage the Grand Creek Ranch that Mr. Washington owns. And, you know, we manage a lot of assets, and sometimes it's easy to look at them as just another piece of property or just another, you know, whatever it happens to be, truck or airplane or whatever. But learning through the process was one of the real benefits for me personally, and for Mike, just to learn about the importance of this land and the value it has to the Marbuts, now to the public in a restricted way, an appropriately restricted way. And we learned a lot more about the ranch that we steward on behalf of its owner. So I think it was just a great process. I'm grateful to the mayor and to his staff, and certainly to Maggie and Five Valleys for coming together and finding a solution. There's just something about this that we just put the right pieces in place.
Gotta be able to.
Made it work. There was a solution there to be found. We just had to keep digging and keep working at it. So I think you pointed out it was almost a year to the date from lunch till when we had semi-final documents or final documents that were signed. So good things that are worthwhile take time and they take effort, and sometimes they take elbow grease and knowing when to compromise, not compromising principles. And so we're just very grateful to the Marbut family that we get to understand a little bit of the history and the value of this place. And as usual, want to be good neighbors because we border the property on the north, and so and I think we're charged with caring for the property in the same way we care for the ranch. So we look forward to doing that, and we'll do it with certainly the respect that this place is due. So thank you for allowing us to participate in your honoring your mother and your family.
Thank you very much, and thank you for leaving the lake and your family to come down just for this purpose. Paul and the mayor aren't able to join us for lunch. Most of the rest of you will be there, but thank you all. Kelly, any comments to make for you?
Oh, sure. I in turn would like to thank the mayor and Paul and Mike and especially Mom, because it did for a while it seemed that we were in a situation where it would be a lose-lose-lose proposition, and I'm so happy that the right people came together at the right time to create a win-win-win, or 6 wins, as Mom put it. So I think that that's really important, and I think that it's the right thing for the long-term legacy of the property, because as several people have said, it's important not just what happens in our lifetimes, but also what happens long after. So I feel that the setup of who owns it and who oversees it is perfect. And I also feel that it manages the needs of the bike and recreational users with the needs for wildlife and preserving some old growth riparian habitat. That's very, very important. We know a lot about this property in part because of Five Valleys baseline, but also for years the Audubon Society has been involved here counting birds and keeping track. And oftentimes, as you may know, people in Audubon are pretty competitive. And so when they do their bird counts, they always like to have those species that nobody else gets. And there are a couple, including the veery, that Larry Weeks knows he can find here because they like undisturbed, old-growth riparian forest, and there's so little of it close to Missoula. So it's like his secret stash that he comes and documents who lives here. So it's just one of many species that'll benefit from this, including the humans. So I'm super happy, and thanks especially to Mom because she provided a lot of the energy behind this to do it.
Thank you very much. Kelly's just been an amazing steward of this property, of her property, of my property up in the hill, my cabin and her house across through the stream that flows through it, and it's my delight. I live some of the year in Portland, Oregon, and it's my delight to be here and be with Kelly and her family and her horses, and it's not my delight to deal with that predatory deer, which we're thinking about bear spray as if the wind is not blowing towards us. We also, I sighted the last time I was here, 3 weeks ago, sighted a first in the bear population, which was the largest of the black bears we've ever seen. Coal black, shiny, glowing coat, with one cub leading her, and I thought maybe she'd lost the other, and behind her 2 little balls of black fur. So I've never seen bear triplets before. But there they were, and I have photographic evidence from a distance, but I was on the phone with a client person, right? It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there are the triplets. Yes, where's my camera? My phone is sorry, gotta go. I hung up on him and I said later, it was my impolite behavior was due to bear cub triplets. Would that be okay? And he said, what did you just say? So at any rate, well, there are a few people in the audience here who have met my mother, who know something about her. One of the persons who is not here because he had to leave this morning is Lance Marbut, who's Michael's son. And so he had to leave this morning for another commitment. He lives in Las Vegas where it's really cool today. And so I said, what do you remember most about Charlo as a little kid? And he said, well, orangeade. She made orangeade. I know how to make orangeade. I know, and I'm going to tell him, but not yet. And then I said, and what else? And he said, I really liked your meatloaf better than any meatloaf since. But the thing I really liked is that in the front yard of the ranch house, there is a then this big around elm tree, now huge tree, and we all wanted to climb it. And so I asked permission to go up in the tree because I'd like to sit in the branches and just watch the world go by. And she said, the rule is, this very polite patrician woman, the rule is that as soon as you can climb the tree without being boosted, you may go climb the tree. And until then, you can't. And he said, I learned how that summer to climb that tree. And that's his most fond memory. One of my most significant memories is hay hounds, lots of hay hounds, for whom mother was the cook. And they generally were kind of roughneck, 16, 17-year-olds who came and expected to just slurp their dinner up and run. So it wasn't very long before they learned that their most important incentive, food, depended on good table manners, addressing my mother politely, clean hands, clean boots, no hay dust in the kitchen, and be nice. And she wouldn't deliver it the way I would, which is, this is what you're going to do. She would say, do you understand? And boy, did they understand. This matriarch did wonders. Occasionally we'd get a hay hound who's the son or grandson of a relative from Denver, which is where we all grew up. And they would, can we send Joe to the ranch so he can learn how to do a hard day's work? By and large, they didn't. And they went home a lot because they didn't get Shallow's message and they didn't work hard enough for Reed and Jerry. So we remember those hay hounds. Okay, so those are my stories. Raise your hand if you knew Charlotte personally.
Raise your hand.
Raise my hand. Oh, yes. Well, of course I
That would be your mother-in-law.
Oh, yes. She was a very, very interesting person, but be very warm and friendly one day and distant the next, but very, very bright, and she cared enormous about all the children. She was very affectionate with them, and I remember that.
And Tim has been, before you walked across the street, I said he's been the family accountant for 400 years. Both of us are pretty old.
Yeah, really.
You want to make a comment or two?
Well, you heard her comment about hay hands. Well, I was one of those.
That's
Four.
right.
And so about in the summer of 1965, when I was a junior in college, I had a little break and I got to come out and get acquainted with the land and the process of picking up hail bales. And I think Steve and I worked together, and Mike might have been there too. So that was my first experience with the Marbut family, with the land that was here. And it was a real wonderful experience. It was a good experience for me at that time. Then I moved to Great Falls for a couple of years, and I was lucky enough to get back to Missoula and went to work for a CPA firm here in Missoula, Dobbins and McGrew, and one of their clients was the Grant Creek Ranch. And I was assigned to work with them when I first arrived, and so I got to work with Charlotte. Charlo was what she was called. I met with her in the kitchen of the ranch house and spread out the big black book that had 42 columns across and all those kinds of things. And she went about the process of training a young accountant how to deal with people like her and bright and challenging and interesting people. She was a very special lady, and I think it's wonderful that she has. I know her. I sensed from her love for the property and the land, and this is obviously a wonderful way to demonstrate that.
And Mike and Steve, you've had a lot of interactions with Charlotte. Any comments? What do you wish to make?
Well, I guess my memories are that I was kind of the grunt person to know for a lot of years, but I remember she was very insistent that I was the head wheat puller around her house and stuff, and I got plenty of that, wheat pulling and stuff like that, but I do remember well how much she cared about family and how she wanted the family gathered around her, and she did that, accomplished that, had the family gathered around her, and she was kind of a peacemaker many times because of her quite a bit of friction with any kind of a family operation like that, as we all know. But it we worked hard, and had a lot of good years on the ranch, and I remember a lot of horseback riding and a lot of hard work and stuff. But it was good, and it was really good for me as upbringing to learn that you have to work to be successful, and it takes a lot of hard work to do that. So that's my memories.
And Steve? I'm sorry, Gary. But Gary is my brother, and I'm so sorry. You have to be Steve.
Well, I solved that problem years ago with Gary Stevens.
I can remember you're using
That's
three
what I've
names
called
for
him for 25 years.
Time to time. Gary Stephen Marbut. Gary Stephen.
I think having grown up on the land here, all of us developed a special love and respect for the land, for this land, and for land in general, but especially this property. And I was part of the hay crew that Tim mentioned, that you mentioned, and I handled every bale off of all of the meadows on the ranch multiple times, multiple years. Got a good, strong physical body out of it. For all those people who go to the gym and do 20 reps, I did about 500 a day of hay bales. And spent a lot of time with and around Charlotte. She was ever present. She was involved in every aspect of the ranching activity, including meals for the hay crew, which I was part of, and including hosting me in the ranch house for I don't remember how many years, but I lived in a bedroom high up in the house, and I do remember that she would chastise me only gently for reading after lights out under the covers with a flashlight. Well, that's just one of the things that sticks in my mind. But I do, because all of us have inherited, I think, her love for the land. I really appreciate all of you who were involved in making this happen, and especially those of us who travel the road every day. I had my first driver's license when I was about 10 years old, provisional license, so I could drive to the bus stop. And so I've been, I don't know how many thousands of trips over Grand Creek Road, but very concerned about the bicycle folks on the road and trying to keep them safe. So I appreciate the compromises that put this together, and also in Charlotte's memory.
And I should also point out that Ty is Gary Stephen Marbut's son.
What you're comfortable with, for heaven's sake.
Okay. And the lights out thing, I should say that when I was a little girl, for a period of time, we lived in a small apartment, and my two brothers were away at school, and so I was the only kid at home, and I slept in the same room that Charlotte slept in. And so I'm a night person. She was not, but I'd go to bed, and she'd be working around elsewhere. And the Lone Ranger came on at 10:30 at night. A radio program some of us are old enough to remember. But the radios of the day had to be plugged in, and B had big hot tubes in them. So what I would do is get in bed, turn on I Love a Mystery and the Lone Ranger. They're 2 half-hour shows. And I turn on the radio, and then I learned that I needed to find something to prop up the sheet so that the heat from the radio could escape. And my mother learned that if she poked her head in and saw the sheet was flat, I was asleep, probably with a hot radio beside me. And if the sheet was up, she was going to say, "Barbie, lights out, radio's out." So that's my recollection of after hours behaviors. Another view would be from the Whites. Randy and Dee Dee White, whom some of you know, own the parcel of property that's between Kelly's place and mine, up sort of on the side of the hill. And Gary Sr. and Randy's father, Earl, had occasional disputes over, what would you guess? Water. And so, Randy and Dee Dee, you want to make some comments about the Charlotte?
I only recall meeting Charlotte on 2 or 3 occasions, but it was always the presence there of Charlotte, and she was definitely a strong-willed person. Ran things on the ranch. I have to admire that dedication. For that era of our society, for women to take that on and keep the family together for that long. But I can remember being down at the house and riding horses with Mike, and being in the house and up to the bedroom. Getting back to your comment about water, that was a huge issue because so many people liked this valley and settled here and put in claims, and suddenly there was more claim for water than there was water. And so there was a number of court battles over the years over that. issue and a big pecking order of priority of the water claim. Fortunately, the subdivision, things have changed and kind of peppered that over the years. A lot of conversations over the dinner table about water issues.
Yeah. The oldest water rights belong to the ranch, and some for me and some for you. But there are a whole lot of water rights on a very long list. And some city folk who move up here understand how you don't make bears bad bears by leaving your trash out, and you don't use water for your kids' pool, and you don't pipe water out of that creek, and water requires a right and you don't have it. So we've done a lot of education, never enough, Paul, so you can probably get some of this now. Have you had any water wars lately?
Not lately.
Good. And Kelly, who is the Aunt Helen that caught Kelly out? So I can't sew on a button, but Kelly's a fine.
Oh, there were
seamer.
two Helens.
There were two Helens.
There was
Both of them were
Big Helen and Little Helen. Yes.
quite the seamstresses.
Yeah, yes. And one was a piano teacher.
Yes,
And who had the green thumb?
that's the same.
Same one, yeah. So, yes, and that's where the greenhouse came from, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I always look forward to coming in because you guys had the orchard and the flowers, and there was always something growing, and it was just a really great place.
And which Helen taught you sewing?
Well, I think both of them.
Years later, Kelly won first prize a sewing machine for a dress that a red wool dress that I will never forget. That the contestant who ran that. Somebody ran that fashion show and picked the winning dress, which was Kelly's. So they kept the dress, gave her a sewing machine, which she has used. Do you still have it?
I still have it.
That's good. So it was, this valley has been a community, and there are several hundred more residents now than there were then, but at least we're going to have safer driving. And the gravel road is now a paved road, and it's going to be 10 years before there's going to be money to widen it, which is okay with me as long as we don't get anybody hurt like bicyclists.
I suspect it'll be longer than that.
Anybody else have any comments about the Charlotte? It's getting a little warmer, so most of us are heading up the valley for lunch.
Hey, Barbara.
Yes.
I just wanted to
Oh, yes, I did say I
On
would.
behalf of Five Valleys, thank you so much for involving us. We're thrilled and honored to be a part of this solution that you all have worked so hard on, and we're honored to be a part of helping protect this land in perpetuity. And thanks for all your work. This is a little plaque.
Here, we'll let the camera focus on. No, he's the camera.
It's a little plaque from Five Valleys presented to the family.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sarah, can I get you to carry this with you, because I'm carrying
Sure,
it myself.
yeah. Or actually, I'll take it.
Okay. Kelly can take it up, and we'll have it at lunch.
Yeah.
And so I'm very happy to have had you here today. I want to applaud all of us for being here.